Joining me now to mark this year's East Clare Easter commemorations are Dr. Tomás Conmara and the Mahara Fianna Fáil Councillor Pat Hayes. This year's ceremony will highlight the life and legacy of Annie O'Mara, a Cumann leader in Flagmount during the War of Independence, whose courage and contribution, alongside her family, played a vital role in the struggle for Irish freedom. And gents, you're both very welcome to the show. And Tomás, can you tell us a bit more about this year's commemorations and why it was important to focus on Annie O'Mara and her family?
Sure, Alan, and thanks again for the opportunity. You've always been very good to us every year for our commemoration. Alan, I suppose each year we take the opportunity to shine a light on an aspect or an individual or people that were involved deeply in the Irish revolutionary period in the East Clare area, or at least from the East Clare area. So we take it very seriously every year when we discuss, who should we take the opportunity to highlight. And this year, Pat obviously would have been very aware in his own area of the contribution of the O'Mara family to the revolutionary period. So that was suggested as appropriate. And when we looked into it more, we could see how powerful they were as an example of a small, local, rural family that contributed to a revolution that had international significance. So it was really an appropriate fit for commemoration in 2026. So Annie O'Mara, as you mentioned there, would have been the OC of the local Flagmount company of the 6th Battalion of the East Clare Cumann Brigade, and would have as such been responsible for the local members of Cumann within her area, but also across the brigade area, contributed massively to that struggle. And there are multiple examples of what she did in risking her own life to contribute to that struggle, right from 1916, even when Liam Mellows, who would have been one of the leaders of the Easter Rising, came to the East Clare area when on the run and being one of the most wanted men in the country at the time. She was one of the people who looked after Liam Mellows, and from that moment on, really, she committed herself to the revolutionary movement and to the Republican movement. So throughout the War of Independence, she would have been involved in obviously catering and looking after IRA men that were on the run, but also carrying dispatches, from Flagmount, where she was from, down to Scariff and across the North East Clare area. And as well as that, organised at one occasion in 1919, 5 rifles to be secured for the East Clare IRA Brigade, which was hugely significant in the context of how poorly armed the East Clare Brigade would have been throughout the War of Independence. So for her to be able to actually secure 5 rifles and bring them back into the brigade area from Galway, from Ballinasloe, was really, really significant. And I suppose that just typifies the type of risks that Annie was prepared to take. But across her family, including her sister Birdie and her 2 brothers, Harry and Tommy, who were both deeply involved in the IRA. Harry O'Mara was actually adjutant of the East Clare IRA Brigade, while Tommy was intelligence officer for the 6th Battalion of the IRA Brigade in East Clare as well. So this is a family that were deeply, deeply involved in the highest level of revolution across East Clare, and are, as I said, an example of families right across that area that, put their lives at risk during a time when our country was fighting for its independence, and it's only right that we take the opportunity this year to commemorate them. Yeah,
and Pat, I know you've spoken about restoring balance, I guess, and how we remember the past, and that people and women in particular, like Annie O'Mara, have been historically under-recognised. And how important is it that commemorations like this highlight the contribution, not just Annie, but women who played their part, that they were central, not just supportive to the success of the independence movement?
Well, I suppose we're kind of unique in a way that we actually have a memorial park. We're, I think, one of the very few that actually has a memorial park dedicated to the East Clare Brigade of the IRA and Cumann. So we have taken this very seriously. Like over the years, we've had a lot of people come, relatives of people that were involved with Cumann and the Hogan family, and a whole lot of people have come over the years. So, as you can see from Thomas's review there of the O'Mara family, it was a family unit, and Annie O'Mara and Burdy and all of them took an active role with their brothers, and they were the type of people that fought for our freedom, and those are the ones that sometimes are forgotten and never talk. We talk about the highlights and the big times, and people talk about 1916 and all that, but behind every campaign, and particularly this campaign for our freedom, were a whole lot of families and women that put their lives at risk every day to try and make sure for a better Ireland and a free Ireland. And I think it's really opportune that we actually take that opportunity to celebrate and remember those people for their huge contribution.
And Tomás, as you rightly said, the commemoration is honouring the wider O'Mara family. So on that, I mean, how significant is it that there's family involvement in this year's celebration? One of Annie's, there's a nephew who's helped develop the memorial. A member of the family will lay a wreath as well.
Yeah, well, look, this is again one of the really, I suppose, poignant things for us as a commemoration group. Obviously, we want to highlight the roles of these individuals and highlight the overall drive for independence and the struggle for our independence. But for the families, it's an opportunity for them to come together and to, see their people recognised. And Pat is right in terms of the sometimes the failure for us to recognise the so-called smaller players, but of course, as we know, without people like the O'Maras and others that we're commemorating this weekend, like Martin Murray and Martin Walsh, the War of Independence couldn't have happened. So for the families to come along and see their people recognised, just as much as the major figures of the War of Independence is hugely important. And there's no doubt within their family tradition, these stories would have been told over the years. But what we're doing is taking the opportunity to amplify that to the broader public and to shine a light, for the broader public to see the roles of these individuals. So, we do agree that, of course, women have not been given the recognition they were due, but I've always felt that local tradition and family tradition would hold these stories, very proudly. And what we're doing, as I said, is shining a light on those for the broader public to see. So we're delighted, and every year we're really taken back by the amount of family members that come along and how proud they feel to have their family tradition recognised in a public way. So over the last number of decades, and Pat's nearly been involved for 30 years, but over that number of decades, we've shone a light on different families and different people every year. So over those decades, we've contributed to a greater telling of the story of the revolutionary period, and we feel that's really, really important.
Pat, it should be a really memorable and poignant occasion on Easter Sunday in Clr. Can you just let people know to finish where that'll be happening? I know there'll be a further ceremony at the grave of the Scariff Martyrs as well, and what time everything gets underway.
Yes, well, look, I think actually that this kind of a unique year in another reason as well. We're actually, for the first time ever during Easter period, we're going to the bridge in Cllr as well, to the memorial to the Scariff Martyrs on the bridge on Saturday evening. We're going to lay a wreath there as well this time, once it's pedestrianised and made safe for us. And I suppose to reclaim and make sure that people know exactly that memorial on the bridge and where the Scariff Martyrs were shot. And I think that's a very important event. This year is a new addition to our annual commemorations. And then on Easter Sunday, we gather at the Memorial Park in Clr at 10 o'clock, where we lay wreaths there, the O'Mara family. And then we follow on up to the Scariff, where we have Mass in the church in memory of the East Clare Brigade and Cumann, and the Scariff Martyrs will be celebrated in Scariff Church at 11. And following that, we'll lay wreaths at the grave of the Scariff Martyrs. Okay. And I think it's just poignant, and I think, as Tomás said, when you look back over the years and you see all the memories and all the people, how they've attended the Scariff Martyrs funeral and how their contribution and their small contribution in a unique way has been celebrated, really gives us heart. And I kind of look back in awe and say, well, look at what these people done for our freedom, and the small and simple ways some people were involved with the big impact it made in where we are today. Yeah. And I think that's really the events that are on Saturday evening and Sunday are really important, and I would encourage people to take that small period on Easter Sunday or Saturday evening to come and be with us to say, pay homage and remembrance to the people that give us our freedom.
And I've no doubt there'll be quite a turnout for those. My thanks to Councillor Pat Hayes and to Dr. Tomás McComera for joining me on Morning Focus.